doing an altered version of that so far. And parliamentary debate is the most common form of competitive debating in North America and the world. So, a couple of tournaments that the competitive debating happens in is the United States Universities Debating Championship. That's like the national championship in the US. There's the Canadian National Championship, which I got to participate in 3 times. And there is the World Championship, which I also got to participate in 3 times. So this is just like to show you guys that's like popular, that there's a lot of different countries that do this. So the goal of parliamentary debate is for people to have a good discussion and to enhance the audience's understanding of the topic that we're discussing. So this is meant to be like somewhat of like an educational performance in a couple of ways. So with that being said, we're doing a little bit of an altered version of this. That's because the Canadian version has 2 teams, and the two teams of 2 people, and the British version, which is the most popular in the world, has 4 teams of 2 people. So we do 2 teams of 3 people. So we do a little bit of an altered version. If you guys are wondering, it's a little bit closer to how they debate in Australia. Bunch of countries have different formats around the world. So we're going to go over some of the parliamentary debating roles, guys. So there's 3 roles we're going to go over for if you're the pro side. So there's the prime minister, who speaks first. There's the member of government, or the deputy prime minister, who speaks second. And then you have the government whip, who speaks third. So each position has a little bit of a different flair to it and a different job, but there is a lot of an overlap between them. Okay, so the prime minister starts the debate and tries to give us a clear picture of what we are debating. So the prime minister is responsible for defining words in the motion that may be unclear, and they have to set up the debate. So let's go back a couple of weeks, maybe to a topic like the classic example I like to use: this house would ban zoos. So the prime minister's job would be to talk about, what does banning a zoo look like? What does banning a zoo mean? The prime minister should probably also tell the audience what's going to happen to all the animals in the zoo. You know what I mean? Like, are we going to ban the zoo and then make them illegal? Are we going to eat all the animals that were in the zoo? Are we going to release them into nature safely inside like animal reserves? So you want to like kind of paint a picture for the audience with the prime minister's speech, tell them how this debate is going to work, what the motion actually means, and you're supposed to do something called modeling the debate. So modeling the debate is when you tell us how how you're going to implement the motion. So if it was, we're going to make sure everybody gets paid the same, an example of that model would be, we're only going to make sure that people get paid the same if they're working a full-time job. So people who have part-time jobs don't get this benefit of being paid the same as everybody. That's another example of a model. So you should have 2 to 3 arguments. Since you have to set up the debate as the prime minister, you don't need to fill your speech with arguments. So then we're going to get to the second speech. But before we get to the second speech, we're going to skip ahead to the second side just so this flows a little bit better. The 3 roles on the opposite side, the con side, is the leader of the opposition, the member of the opposition, or the deputy leader of the opposition, and the opposition whip. So after the prime minister speaks, guys, and sets up the debate, it should be the leader of the opposition. So the leader of the opposition is the first speaker on con. You have to respond to the arguments of the prime minister. You have to say why they're wrong. And then you have to come up with your own arguments. You don't have to do all of that defining and modeling that the prime minister has to do, because you're just trying to prove why they're wrong. So you can have 2 to 3 arguments, and you want to respond to the prime minister. Going back to the other side, so then we have the member of the of government, or the deputy prime minister. So the deputy prime minister has 3 jobs. 1, make new arguments. 2, respond to the arguments from the leader of the opposition. And then the third job is to rebuild the prime minister's argument. So rebuilding arguments is like you're rebuilding them after they got hit by a storm. You're going to go take a hammer with some bricks, some clay, some nails, and you're going to go and fix all of the arguments for your teammate. So that means you need to say why the leader of the opposition's responses were wrong. Titania, you have a question?
So it's basically like a rebuttal to a rebuttal.
It is, exactly. It's a rebuttal to a rebuttal. So you can think of it like that. That's a really good way of putting it. So remember, that's what you want to do. You want to help your teammate out. You want to say why the opponent is wrong, and then if you want, you can come up with a new argument. So on the next slide, that is mirrored on the opposition side. The second speakers on both teams have an identical job. Make an argument or make one or two new arguments, rebuild, respond. Okay, now we're going to get to the third argument. So I haven't really told you guys about this role, and I've just let you guys do whatever you wanted for the third speech, just so you guys could get comfortable and practice speaking. But the third speech has a little bit of a different role. So you're not supposed to make any new arguments in the third speech. That's why I've been telling you guys it's okay if you repeat each other or if you don't have a new argument. What you're supposed to do in the last speech, the whip speech, is you are supposed to summarize the debate. So you are supposed to tell me what this debate is about. So maybe on the zoo debate, just to use that as an example, the pro side for banning zoo says we need to worry about animals' happiness and animal freedom. On the con side, they are saying that we can use zoos for research to protect endangered species. And then the whip speech would kind of try and summarize this debate. So you would say, okay, everybody, at the end of the day, this debate is about animal welfare. Both sides have given you different arguments for how we get animal welfare. On government side, we told you that all animals should be free from cages and they should not be oppressed by people. On the opposition side, they told you that it's okay for us to oppress some animals so that we can get research to save other animals. I'm going to tell you why that is an incorrect way to perceive animal welfare, and that the only way to actually care about animal rights is to make sure that all animals are safe and not just a few. So, you're not actually giving new arguments. You're just summarizing the things your team said and what the opponent said and trying to say why your stuff was right at the end of the day. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You can still have new details and new analysis, but you shouldn't have a completely new argument. You should only be adding to the stuff that your team has already done. And that is the exact same on the opposition side because they have the opposition whip. Okay, so those are the three roles. Are there any questions about those roles? To Tanya.
Maybe could we make one more role that is for you? You would be the judge of this?
Yes. Well, that is true. At debating competitions, there is a judge who says who won and who lost. There is a whole other lesson if you guys are ever interested in learning how to judge. That's an entirely different process aside from debating. But nonetheless, it is very fun. Okay, so we're going to try and slowly incorporate that, guys. Just try and keep these roles in the back of your head, and we'll build up on these roles over classes as everything goes. Okay, so